Seizure is defined as a transient occurrence of signs and symptoms due to abnormal, excessive, or asynchronous neuronal activity in the brain. The manifestation of seizure depends on location and extent of propagation of discharge of cortical neuron. While epilepsy is defined by the occurrence of at least two unprovoked seizures greater than 24 hours apart due to chronic underlying process in the brain and manifested as repeated stereotypic occurrence of the same experiences. If a person have two seizures, he have about 80% chance of recurrence. Seizure and epilepsy is a clinical phenomenon rather than a single disease entity. Convulsion is defined as an event of sudden, violent, irregular movement of the body caused by involuntary contraction of the muscle. Epileptic seizures typically include convulsions. However, not all epileptic seizures lead to convulsions, and not all convulsions are caused by epileptic seizure. Single seizure will occur in 5 to 10% of all population. Highest incidence at childhood and adult. Number of people around the world who have epilepsy around 6.5 million, while active seizure is only 0.3 to 0.5%. One third of them live with uncontrollable seizure. Two-thirds of epileptic seizures begin at childhood, most in the first year of life. 6 of 10 of epilepsy are of unknown cause. Epilepsy incidence rate by age is more on the extreme of age, the first year of life, and more than 70 years of life. For understanding seizure, we must know something about the physiology of the brain. The basic unit of the brain is the neuron, which is composed of dendrite and axon. It has the ability of generating and a nerve impulse which transmitted from the cell body to the axon. This ability because it has a resting membrane potential. At rest, the distribution of electrolyte outside and inside the neuron is not equal. The sodium ion concentration outside the cell membrane is more than inside, while inside the potassium ion more than outside. Because of the sodium ion is positively charged, so that the outside is positive, making relatively the inside negative in about minus 70 millivolt. This difference in the electrolyte around the cell membrane will happen because the active transport of sodium ion outside by pumping it using the ATP and returning of potassium ion to inside of the cell. When the neuronal membrane activated physically or chemically, the sodium channel will open, leading to rush of sodium ion inside, making the inside is positive rather than negative, and this will called depolarization. When the inside reaches to plus 30, lead to closure of the sodium ion and stopping the entrance of sodium. At this point, voltage-gated potassium channel will open, lead to exit of potassium ion outside the cell membrane, returning of the cell membrane potential, and this called repolarization. During this period, there is a relative refractory period where the neuron not activated unless there is a higher stimulus. The sodium-potassium pump continue during this process, returning of cell membrane to its initial membrane potential. This is called an action potential, and this action potential will stimulating the next point, and the action potential transmitted from point to point across the cell membrane to the axon. The refractory period is important in directing the action potential from point to point, not reversing back. The neuron receiving multiple stimulation from different nearby neuron by synapses. The synapses composed of presynaptic membrane, postsynaptic membrane, and there is an intersynaptic space. It is transmitting the neuronal impulse by a chemical which is activating the sodium channel on the postsynaptic membrane and generating a new action potential in the next neuron. And this is what we call synaptic transmission. The action potential will initiate it only when there is a drop of the neuronal membrane potential to minus 55 millivolts, which is called the threshold, which is enough for activating voltage-gated sodium channel leading to sodium influx and continuation of the action potential by opening of the potassium channel. The neurons are communicating between other by synapses. We have different type of synapses. Excitatory synapses, which is dropping membrane potential to the threshold, and inhibitory synapses, that is repolarizing the cell membrane and making it is difficult for reaching the threshold. So we have an excitatory network and we have an inhibitory network. The net force of this network either making the neuron membrane reaching the threshold and leading to generation of action potential, or reversing to the hyperpolarization and there is no generation of an action potential. Seizure is the need for sudden imbalance between the excitatory and inhibitory forces within the network of the cortical neuron. And that is occur because of presence of a group of pathologically excitable neuron and the increase in the excitatory glutaminergic activity through recurrent connection in order to spread the discharge, and a reduction in the activity of inhibitory GABAergic projection. The communication between multiple neurons forming a network. At network level, the synchronization of a neuronal activity gives rise to rhythmic voltage fluctuation traveling across the brain regions, known as neuronal oscillation or brain wave. This brain wave resulting in electrical activity that can be recorded by electrogram, which is a machine that using external electrode for recording the electrical activity of brain. This is an example for the EEG record of the brain.